I was old. So I think Monica and I will both agree that like we are old. So like everyone was younger, not the profs. That was about it.
Hmm.
But like we definitely came across people who I was like, oh, like I really like you. Like I really, I get you. We get each other on the same plane. And on the one hand, like made friendships there, but there is something to be said about like no one else, like none of the other three women that we have in our Golden Girls group have kids, but it's still a demographic where it's like like one of us had a house, one of us had like we've had long-term jobs, we've had long-term relationships, like there's just
Hmm.
pieces that like I wasn't the only married person, like I wasn't the only person who had certain life things I had, life accomplishments, and it not in a way of like I'm a better person because of it, but
Right.
because
It's sort of a life stages thing. Like when I first refer to friends of mine, it's not so much the age gap in my relationship with friends that makes a big difference. It's sort of, yeah, those life stages. Like, are they still in undergrad? Are they doing grad school? Are they doing do they get married? Are they long-term relationship? Like all those life experiences, I think they do make a difference when it comes to who you relate to in your peer group. Hmm.
yeah, I will say that I did find that hard going to school where no one had kids, and I felt very, very, very lonely when I started. And uh, I that was the first time I had ever lived by myself. So I went from being at home so I did OACs because old. So grade 13, and then I went to living in a student house for first year, and then I got married. So I have lived like with people until I went to law school. That was the first time I'd ever lived by myself. So that was both lonely and like good, because it was a good experience in the sense of I'm glad I did it. I don't
Hmm.
particularly like it, but like I'm glad I did it. But yeah, it was. I do still. I found it very hard going into a setting where no one else talked about their kids. Like when you have kids and you talk to people who have kids, sometimes the conversation, that's all it is. And like that is not fantastic. I do not like, I'm not just a mom, I'm many other things.
Hmm.
But like, so you'd go into these situations and like, normally in like you're talking to like a school mom and you're like, yeah, how's your Johnny? Like, blah, blah, blah. You make these conversations. No one at law school, not only like did they not have that to talk about, they didn't ask me that. And it was bizarre not being asked about my kids constantly. Like
Yeah.
it's just how you function as a like fellow parent. And yeah, I found that really weird, but not bad, just weird.
Hmm.
And I
That's
think,
interesting. Sorry,
sorry.
Monica, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to just add on that I could sense from the people around this a genuine lack of, it was the social experience, and like for me it was not just an inability, for some time people it was an inability to hold a conversation
Hmm.
and to interact, and I was just kind of like, I need
Sorry,
I
inability to
need
hold a
someone to
conversation
talk to.
among other peers that were not your friends, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was, it's bizarre. I think a lot of it probably is very similar to other, if you go out of your group and go completely into a new group. So like if I moved countries and went into a different country that,
Mm,
everyone was not my culture and spoke a different language, that kind of thing, you need to find people who are like you, because you, like you said before, like you need those connections of, oh, I get you. And the automatic, I don't have to teach you. I don't have to explain it to you. You just understand me and I understand you.
mm,
And those things allow you to then have those relationships that are new, that are like, I'd never hung out with a 23-year-old unless I was doing youth work, like at church. Like that was not something I did. So, but it was really like, I love that. Like, I love that we got to do that, but I wouldn't have been able to just have a 23-year-old as my friend for the same reason that they wouldn't have been able to have me as only their friend. We needed people who got us. And I think that for me, finding people who were, quote unquote, my people, integral to getting through law school, because it's
absolutely.
insane.
Yeah. So shifting a little bit to sort of the professional side of law school, OCIs were brought up earlier, followed by the phrase, "Please don't do them." Um, OCI is an entirely different conversation. I'm thinking of having it as a topic, but specifically in your context, job interviews. When you are in a job interview, whether it's OCIs or something else, or any sort of professional setting, and the fact that you went to law school as a mature student, or the fact, Roz, that you have a family, or Monica, your previous job experience, how is that brought up, and do you have to navigate in a particular way? And Roz, I'll start with you.
That is a fun one as a parent. So I have many conversations with the Golden Girls about this, so it's not gonna be new to them. But when I
They're here for
was
it, I'm sure.
Thanks ladies for showing up. When I was going through OCIs, I struggled about how honest to be, because I can't lie on my resume, but I don't have to say I have kids, and I don't have to say I'm married. I obviously have to say my age because you can figure it out. But so I asked a few people in positions of quote unquote power and authority. So for instance, I remember going on a first year firm tour in Toronto. And then I kept, because I'm an old, as Carly would say, I'm pretty good at networking, and I'm good at making those connections. And I don't have the shyness that comes when you first start doing it of like, well, I don't know if I should connect. If you tell me I can connect with you, I'm going to shoot you an email. I don't care what it is, but I'm going to shoot you an email, and like, we're going to connect, and I'm going to have a phone call with you, because I like to make those connections, and I never know when it's going to be useful and what I'll learn. So one of them was with a woman who I do quite respect, but she was at a big law firm, and I called her and said, listen, like, I'm going to probably do OCIs. Like, how do you suggest I do this as a parent and, married, etc. And she said, don't tell them. She's like, take off your wedding ring. Don't tell them you have kids. Like, don't, because what they want is sort of a young person who's going to work hard. You can see where this is going, who has a lot of time and is just going to sort of put their nose to the grind.
Yep.
OCIs. Or just sort of Bay Street in general. You can tell how I feel about it. And I ended up doing some interviews. When I ended up doing the OCI process, I ended up doing some interviews like that. And I ended up doing some fully honest, where I went in and I almost immediately would make some reference to having kids or something. Like they'd say, oh, you're an older student. And I'd say, yeah, and I commute every weekend from Hamilton to Windsor. And I have, because my kids are at home or whatever. And I'd work it into the conversation. And those are the ones where I ended up getting interest back. And I don't think it was necessarily because they wanted someone who had kids, but I think it was because I was being authentic. So I will say that that's sort of a piece of it, of like, when you're an older person, a mature student going in, you should be very honest about who you are, because it's who you are. And also they're going to hire you. So you want them to know who you are, because you'll get totally found out as a fake otherwise. And then you will feel like an idiot. Did not do that. I'm just saying I would have if I had. But I will say that I remember people being very nervous about interviews, and I was nervous about OCIs and nervous about interviews in general. But and I'm sure Monica can say this too, like I had done a million interviews by that point. I had held multiple jobs. I had gone higher up in my agency by doing interviews. So like for me, and it was not because I'm like fantastic, it's because the same reason that like if you had 10 years before you went to law school, you would also be good at interviews because you would have had a million of them. So that was really nice, knowing that like I could do those. And I'm well at them just because I'm experienced. So, and I like to talk. So yeah, that was definitely a bonus, but I didn't find most of the time that the interviewers, minded that I was old, but it was always a topic of conversation. Oh, I see you're a social worker. What made you want to go from social work to this or whatever? Like, why aren't you doing family law? I got that question all the time. So.
Of course. Monica, how about you? Did you find that interviewers also responded to authenticity generally better?
Yes. I guess I will say this: retail isn't seen as a profession. So I feel, I don't know this to be true because I don't know what other people are thinking, but I probably applied to, over the course of 3 years, maybe 90 jobs, and got exactly 3 interviews and got 2 of those jobs. So coming from where I was coming from, a lot of my work was put into rejigging my resume and putting in a cover letter to explain the skill set that I had acquired into a format, like literally translating it to a lawyer job. And at first, I don't think I was very good at it at all, because I was being very genuine and authentic, and but wasn't putting any work into translating my accomplishments and what I had done. So I think, again, I don't know what the feedback is, but I can tell you when I interviewed for the job I have now, it felt like just a sigh of relief that these were the people I had been looking for, and I was the person that they were looking for. You know, coming as an article, like when you're interviewing for, like, I felt like I was skipping a step because I wasn't going into a transitional, slow kind of job. I was interviewing for a full-time staff lawyer job. And so this was the time where my experience in hiring and firing staff, working in a large team, working independently, all those things that I had, like managing $1 million business, became an asset because I managed to translate it into this more serious job. So I don't know how much feedback I have. I didn't apply to a lot of jobs in the OCI process, but a lot of it was because my motives, I think, were different at the time.
If you were smarter?
I did a lot of work in just literally looking up firms, and I wouldn't apply to anyone that at least like 50%, if 50% of your firm is white men, then I wouldn't even bother applying. And I didn't, a lot of the jobs that were available at the time, I just wasn't motivated by, but it definitely made everything harder. But I think predominantly it was me trying to translate my skills because on its face, it looks like I did nothing for 15 years. And I'm like, I did so much stuff.
You did so much stuff. And the frustrating, the things that are bringing out, that this conversation is bringing out in me that's frustrating is the effort that you went into to translate your past job experience and skills into something that would be recognizable as value to a lawyer trying to hire you, when it should be seen as just inherently valuable. That experience. You mentioned hiring, firing people, managing a business, retail, like all these are skills that lawyers have, or lawyers need, and most lawyers do not have. So yeah, I think that is a really valuable point to bring up, that people having to mold themselves to fit a certain image that lawyers are looking for, when their experiences should be regarded as beneficial to them. That can be very frustrating. And yes, I'm sorry to hear that that took up so much of your time, honestly.
It was a learning experience. So
yeah, absolutely. Um, just to sort of wrap up on a final topic here, if there was anyone who was thinking of going to law school later in life as a second career, anything like that, what sort of advice would you give them, both in choosing a school to apply to and what to do when you get there to get yourself set up well? Monica, how about you start?
Definitely, I think the golden rules would disagree, but I think definitely do it. I have the luxury of, like, I had access to funds. I had access to loans. Sorry, I didn't have my own money. Didn't have parent money or anything like that, but I had the privilege of accessing loans. But I think do a lot of research of the school and the professors that are being taught and their motives. I only applied to Ottawa and Windsor because just based on the research I had done on the schools and the professors I saw. Also, I should say, again, from Toronto, I just would never go to any U of T school. I find their politics questionable. But I will say, as a mature student, do a lot of research of the school and know ahead of time how much work it's actually going to be. Reach out to, watch this program, but reach out to people you might know, or your local community legal clinic, and just say, can you send me to someone? Because it's important to know that when you get there, you'll find people. And if your politics don't line up, if you care a lot, if your politics and your views match up with, Queen's, because you've done research and you know the professors and you know what kind of ideas they're trying to espouse there, then narrow your choices, I guess I would say.
Very good. Roz, how about you?
I would say that I would recommend it if you know that's what you want to do. It's definitely a financial commitment. I will say, as someone who's older, it added to my debt load. And when you have kids, a house, and a husband, it adds to their debt load. So that was a sort of not a decision I made lightly. It's also a decision I made. It was a purposeful one. I did not choose what law school I went to. I applied to the ones that I would be able to get to, and then applied to Windsor because it was a social justice school. And I was like, I'm into social justice. That's literally what I did for a living. Although many people will say that that's not CAS, and that is fair. So I ended up getting into Windsor.
It's complicated. It's fine.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Whole other topic.
But Windsor accepted me, and long story, obviously I went there. So I mean, I don't know if I necessarily care which law school I went to. I'm very proud to have gone to Windsor Law, but I don't think it matters. But I will say that when you get to law school, two things. One is to find your people. You don't have to find them right away, but find your people, go to the damn social events and find the weird old people in the corner and go talk to them. And then some people will just be really weird and some people will be people. And then the other thing is to trust yourself. I found that really hard at first because one, I hadn't gone to school in 10 years. It had been a long time since I had done an exam. I still remember our first midterm, and I freaked out because I was like, how do you study? I don't remember. But so the way that I did when I was 25, so the way I did school, the way I did life was not going to work when I was 31. Actually, so I wasn't 25 when I was done school. I was about 23. It wasn't going to work when I was 31, and it wasn't going to be how I do things. So instead I applied the way that I do my job to the way I did school. And when I did that, it worked really, really well. And I mean, that's just really doing what works for you in the sense of be authentic to who you are, as opposed to trying on someone else's stuff. But I found that really helped. In fact, I actually think I did better because of it. I did straight out the gate. I did well academically because I just treated it like this was the job. I came to Windsor 9 to 5 on Monday to Friday, and I just freaking worked. And then I went home on the weekend. I mean, and it's law school, so really you're also working on the weekend. But technically I was just working as if it was a job and not having it be consuming. That is one of the fun things about being an older student, is knowing that it's just a job. And that's where I will say, if you want it as a job, then do it. But it doesn't make you a better person or necessarily a different person. It makes you a person who also can do a law job. It doesn't make you bigger and better. The same as I will say a doctor doesn't make you bigger and better. Accountant doesn't make you a bigger or better person. It just gives you a different job. So if you like the law, then I would say you should do it and you will find your people. But
yeah. I just want to echo what Roz just said, because I like that you said mature students. And I think that's something that connected us, was about maturity and setting boundaries, because that's usually not always a skill set that comes with experience. But when you treat law school like your job, then you have a dedicated time to it, then you literally have off time. And when you're setting proper boundaries, then I learn better, I'll say. Not a person, but I don't want to say globally things like that. But when you set boundaries, when you have that life experience, it just makes the job that much easier, and you're more likely to excel.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for coming on and espousing your wisdom on this. This was really great conversation. I hope you watch the archive, because you'll be able to see all the wonderful things that are being said about you in the chat right now. You have some very big fans here, I'll just say that. So before we wrap up, anything that either of you want to plug, a project, a social cause, anything like that?
So early in the game before any confidence.
Man, I didn't think about that one before. Teddy, that was a hard one. I needed some pre.
No, you're right. I should have warned you. It's just when I had Carly on, I got a good plug out legal listening. So I was just wondering if they're not on the internet. Yeah, no, you're right, Carly. I
Can
forgot
we
about that.
plug, Carly? Can we plug?
Yeah,
Legal
I love
Yes,
legal listening.
let's plug legal listening again. Sure.
So I have recorded a few episodes, and most importantly, right now they're putting out the TRC.
Yep.
So officially, in Carly can put in the chat. In like 1 month's time, no one will have any reason to not have read the TRC, because you can
100%.
listen to it and it's in podcast form.
Great. Yeah, I also did some work on that, and I think it's an amazing project. We love legal listening. We love Carly here. Great. Well, thanks again, both of you coming on. For everyone watching, next week will be a gaming stream. Gonna bring out a few, I think, little sort of slow-paced, less violent indie games, because we've been on a bit of a tear with the more shooty games so far, and I want to mix it up. And then in 2 weeks, we will have our last guest of the year, which will be announced soon. Roz and Monica, thank you so much for coming on. This was great.
Thanks for having us, Teddy.
Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.